back to the action, we look at question 4. Look at the call of the question. In a suit by the car owner against the boy for damages to her automobile, the car owner should, A, prevail because the boy at the age of 10 should have been aware of the consequences of his action. Well, not exactly a good statement of law, not absolutely wrong. B, prevail because the boy deliberately damaged her car. Okay, if he did deliberately do it, that could be correct. C, not prevail because the boy is presumed to be under the care of his parents and therefore is not legally responsible. Okay, we know that's wrong, because minor children are potentially liable for their own intentional torts. Sometimes the statute will put a liability on the parents up to some designated limit. And D, not prevail because the jurisdiction makes parents liable for the intentional torts of their minor children. Okay, we'll have to look at the statute to see any implications, but that's not likely a great answer either. So look at the top of the question. 10-year-old boy, 2 other children caught by the police while breaking the windows of and causing other damage to a woman's automobile one night. Damages totaled $2,000. Parents liable up to $5,000 for willful and intentional torts. All right. The boy did this deliberately. He is going to be liable. The parents may have to indemnify or be also liable. But we look at pick A. Well, that's really a negligence defense or negligence allegation. He should know enough by then. But he did deliberate harm, and that's what makes B the correct answer. He acted deliberately. He's on the hook. The parents can also be vicariously liable, but we're not asked about the parents. We're asked about the boy. Now, what a little quick sidebar. One thing you'll see is that, by and large, just about all these questions have individual fact patterns, one per question. It's not uncommon on the bar for one fact pattern to cover 2 or 3 questions. Your thoughts? It's not the best answer. The best answer is that the question is asking, is a 10-year-old child liable for intentional torts even if there is a parental liability statute? The answer is yes. Technically, yes. Parents could be also liable, likely would be the ones to make payment. That's the answer. Now, let's move on to question 5 and have a look. Yes, go ahead.
I didn't quite get where, I know it's an instance of the court to say that there was an intentional tort in the aspect. It says that he broke windows and
well, that they were caught by the police implies that it was deliberate, and there are no facts in there suggesting that they were being careless. For example, suppose they were playing baseball in the street or some other game line. Okay, then they would tell us, and they would ask us about that. During a baseball or during a street game, kids are breaking windows. But instead, all we're told is that the police are called. And in fact, if we look at this fact pattern from the top, we might mistake it for a criminal law question to begin with, where it isn't. It's actually a torts question. Remember, on the real bar, they mix all the questions up, so you can face torts and contracts and crimes in separate questions. Any follow-up on this one?
It seems like it doesn't say that they were actually deliberately. It says that parents were liable instead of children.
It doesn't say instead. So they would sue everyone. And the question is not that practical. The question is asking, if the child is a defendant, is the child potentially liable? Answer, yes. But the practical reality of the statute is to ensure that someone will make payment or will be found liable. So, and also, it's possible to cover insurance on intentional torts if your kid's up to a point. So I will leave it at that and move on to question 5. Again, take a look at the call of the question. If the injured patron sues the waitress for his injuries, can he recover? Pick A, yes, because the waitress had no duty to rescue. Pause on that, does not seem especially sharp. B, yes, because the waitress assumed the risk. Okay, if the waitress is the defendant, assumption of the risk isn't relevant. Okay, so we can pretty much eliminate B. C, no, because the touching was unintentional. Okay, we'll have to read that. We don't really know. And then D, no, but he may recover against the restaurant. Okay, that's potentially correct also, based on a vicarious liability theory, if the waitress did something potentially wrong. Okay, look at the fact pattern, and we'll see that it's not the waitress that we're really worried about. It's somebody else. Diner starts choking, no negligence at that point on the part of any defendant. Waitress, our defendant, rushed to the diner's assistance. Before she could reach the diner, the waitress slipped on some pudding that a busboy had failed to remove from the floor. The busboy is the one who was negligent. The waitress fell on top of another restaurant patron, injuring him. Okay, so the patron is suing the waitress. What did the waitress do wrong? Nothing. Okay. Can he recover? Yes, because the waitress had no duty to rescue. Okay, that's a silly thing. Because the waitress's duty to rescue is not relevant. B, yes, because the waitress assumed the risk. Again, that's the wrong use of a defense to try to put liability on somebody. C, no, because the touching was unintentional. Well, that's not a good answer either, because a negligent touching could well lead to recovery. And then D, the correct answer, he can't recover against the waitress, but he can recover against the restaurant because it was the busboy who was careless. A comparatively straightforward fact pattern. Now let's look at question 6. Again, focusing first on the fact pattern. on the call of the question. In a suit by the landowner against the cyclist for damage to his lawn ornaments. Okay, we don't need to read the fact pattern to get a sense that a cyclist went off the road, mashed up somebody's lawn ornaments. Okay, A. The cyclist is liable because she had no privilege to enter onto the landowner's property. Possibly correct, we'll have to read. B. Whether the cyclist is liable depends on whether she was exercising due care. I suppose that's also possibly correct. We'll have to read the fact pattern again. C. The cyclist is liable for the damage to the lawn ornaments. Pretty straightforward, potentially correct. D. The cyclist is not liable for the damage to the lawn ornaments because her entry was privileged. Well, the only privilege that would potentially take away her liability would be one of public necessity. So if she had to damage these lawn ornaments in order to save the town from burning or something like that, that would be a viable defense. So look at question 6, the facts. Cyclist riding on a sidewalk, someone in a parked car suddenly opened the door of the car into her path. Swerved to avoid the car door. Okay, that's an act of private necessity. And rode onto a landowner's property, damaging plastic lawn ornaments. Okay, she's privileged to make the entry, but she's liable for damage. Why don't... But she's still, under the circumstances, she is on the sidewalk. When the door is opened, she is in greater danger. Now, it may well be that you would want to take away that privilege based on the fact that she's not where she's supposed to be. But the person in the car has a responsibility not to hurt people on the sidewalk, and it's foreseeable to somebody in a car that someone might be pushing a stroller or riding a bike or doing all sorts of other things people do on sidewalks. So, look at the call again based on the fact that we now know the facts. Pick A, cyclist liable because she had no privilege. That's potentially correct if you interpret that she should be on the street. But I say she is privileged under the facts. And incidentally, I'm right. B, Whether the cyclist is liable depends on whether she was exercising due care. No, it doesn't. Because if she was careless, let's say that she is on the sidewalk and that her being there is in fact careless. All right? So she's not exercising due care. So B we can eliminate based on that assumption. C looks like the correct pick. And then D, the cyclist not liable for the damage because her entry was privileged. That's an incorrect statement of law. A private privilege does not equal an excuse to liability. And whether or not she was exercising due care also doesn't matter. She's going to be liable if she wasn't exercising due care, which is the other potential theory of liability. Okay, landowner in this fact pattern is just suing generally speaking. He could sue for negligence. He could sue for conversion. He'd get the same result both ways. He'd get compensatory damages. And the fact that her entry was privileged also would take away any likelihood of punitive damages. Sure, she did it deliberately, but not in the same way that someone who is liable for an intentional tort would do. That wraps up question 6. I will stop this recording and make one more.